navigating the minefield successful software estimation before requirements are complete. And I've got quite a number of slides that I'm going to go through fairly quickly. So I may be speaking too fast in some cases or maybe going over things very, very quickly, but the recordings will be available to you. Get started. I've got a little bit of information that we're going to talk about project estimating, which may or may not be exactly how you estimate today. So I'm going to give you a few ideas that may be something that's new. If you've already been exposed to measurement-based or functional size measurement-based estimating, this may be a repeat for you, or it may be something completely new. I also want to talk a little bit about what constitutes project requirements and demystifying that a little bit from both the customer point of view and from an IT or developer point of view. Then we're going to get into kind of the meat of this, which is estimation before requirements. What do we do? And then an approach that I call DYB and guesstimate, which actually stands for do your best, and coming up with a guesstimate. And then we'll have a little bit of time, I hope, at the end for questions and answers. As Jessica alluded to, there is a Q&A button on your screen to the right. Provide questions there, and if we don't have time to answer your particular question, I'd be happy to send you an email afterwards and answer your question. So feel free to go with that. Also, you can enter information in the chat box, which will allow you to say I'm going too fast or too slow, or you can't see the slides or any of those types of things. So let's get started. In terms of doing project estimates, we have to estimate a lot of different things. We have to estimate the scope and quality, the effort, the cost, and the schedule. And it really does not matter your software project, if you're doing it agile or waterfall or how you're doing it, you still have to come up with estimates. There's different ways of doing it in terms of software development lifecycle and the way you choose, but we really need to have some idea when someone comes up to you and says, how much will it cost, how big is the effort, what's the schedule going to be, and what can you get done in a certain amount of time. So it's a trivial process by any means. The word estimate itself, when you take a look at it, really says to form an approximate judgment or opinion regarding the worth, amount, size, effort, that type of thing. That's an approximate. I bring this up simply because a lot of times when people ask us, when management or project managers or the customer asks us for an estimate, we sometimes get sucked in and we provide something that we think is the most accurate we can give them at the time. And so somebody says to me, Carol, how much time will it take you to build a such and such system? Run that through some models and come out with what the model tells me is 42.6 person months or 42.6 hours. That's not an estimate. That's some sort of accurate prediction, and that's one of the biggest problems we have is that we've got really when we say 42.6 hours, it's probably more like somewhere between 40 and 70 hours. It really is an approximate value, a judgment or opinion. And so when we give too accurate information or something that seems precise, we're doing it to ourselves. So think about it in this way, that an estimate should be an approximate judgment. And I realize that management sometimes interprets it differently, but really an estimate is approximation. Products today are really faster, better, cheaper. And I used an example of the Tesla here. But in software, not only does our project have to be delivered faster, better quality, cheaper cost per unit, they have to be delivered on time and on budget. And that's where our cost estimation and our project management really comes in. So typical estimating challenges, and this is going to be nothing new to any of you. Look at the input side. Really, with our known knowns, the things that we know are going to be in the project, and our assumptions, we have to question about whether or not they're accurate. Are our inputs accurate? When we provide our best guess of size, of scope, of the quality we need, of the constraints, are those going to be accurate? We also have a question about the completeness of requirements, and not only software requirements, but software requirements, hardware requirements, other requirements. Those are questions we have about our input. Then in terms of our estimating model that we might want to use, we have a question about, are those applicable? are the checks that we are going to estimate similar or comparable to the historical model or to the estimation equations that are included within those models? Do we have historical data available? Those are questions that come up. And when we get the estimate that comes out, once we run our inputs through an estimating model to get our process output, our estimates of cost, effort, or duration, are those consistent? Do people even know what our estimate stands for, what our estimate includes? In or out of scope? Do we include software costs? Do we include training costs? What are those types of things? So really, we need to put any estimate that we do in context. I believe that estimating is like a dog chasing its tail. We start out with what I would consider fairly poor requirements. They're esoteric. They're not concrete. And that's not necessarily one fault or another. It's not necessarily the customer's fault. It's not necessarily the development team's fault or the project manager's fault. We just often start with poor requirements, but we really need to have an estimate. So then we come up with an estimate based on poor requirements, and that estimate obviously is going to not be very good. But we start the project anyway. And then we have the first day on the project, which is human nature. There's going to be something that has changed since we first initiated the project or first came up with the project plan. And so we go back and we say, is that a change or is it a clarification? And we end up with some sort of blame game in some cases. And we go back and we say, well, what did we estimate? Well, we're really not sure what was in the requirement. And so what happens is those changes either get incorporated into our project plan, and it may completely cause problems, or it's clarification and people start blaming and saying, well, that's what I really meant, or it gets thrown into the next phase where, again, we'll have poor requirements, poor estimates, and poor change management. So I think we've got a way of breaking that cycle, and there's some things that we can do to address that. So let's take a look at project requirements. There's three distinct types of requirements that go into any software project. And I'm talking software development project here. I'm not talking about building or enhancing an operating system or bringing in hardware. And what I'd like to say at this point is that software development is similar to building a house. Do a software development estimate. It's kind of like saying I'm going to be building a particular home. And the home is a particular size, and I might have a lot of different ways that I'm going to build this. But if your home construction project or your software development project includes things that really have nothing to do with that software development, you'll need a separate estimate. So what I'd like to do is draw a little box around these three types of requirements because these are software development project requirements. And I'll spend a little bit more time explaining that. So say I have a home construction project, and my home construction project consists of choosing a site, choosing a place that I want to build, clearing that site, doing the construction of the home, and doing landscaping. All of those separate pieces require different skills, different tasks, different work breakdown structure, and so therefore, in terms of coming up with an overall project estimate, we would want to do the software or the building construction project as one estimate, add that to the cost of preparing the site and choosing and soliciting and purchasing the site, and that would also be separate from the landscaping project. Home building construction project, you could see that each of these separate pieces would require a separate estimate that we would then roll together and have as my overall home construction project.